Kids, we're live. I'm a little bit, oh boy, I'm looking like I'm gonna have to change my FPS because my mouth is not going with my voice here. Technical difficulties all over the place. See if that's any better. Not much. Anywho, we're live, and I'm sorry this took a little bit longer. I actually had some computer problems and could not get them figured out to save my life. So we did a reboot, and now we're back. And I can't. Here we go. So before I forget, HelloFresh is our sponsor, and if you want to do me a big favor, I'm not going to go to my long spiel this time. If you want to do me a favor, go to hellofresh.com/BTB16 and just go there and sit there for a few seconds. That way it looks like I'm sending people to the website. So please do that. And if you want to order, you get up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. I don't know what any of the free gifts are because they didn't give me any. But anywho, if you do that, that'll help me make a little bit of money to offset the expenses for the podcast, and I appreciate it. And now, since I've already kept him for 15 minutes longer than I expected, I'm going to bring on a guy that I'm really excited to talk to. It's Damon Sumner. Damon, how are you?
Scott, I'm great. How you doing?
Great. I appreciate you being patient through my technical difficulties.
No worries here. We've all been there before in the world of Zoom and online media.
Yeah. Hey, I gotta say that I listened to your album through a couple times, and I listened to it when I was demolishing my kitchen. We were in a new townhouse here, and I was taking the backsplash off the kitchen, and the backsplash has been there since '87, and it doesn't want to come down. And
Okay.
the the album was so funny that it has big laughs and it has the giggles in between and then more big laughs, and it is so rapid fire that I had to listen to it twice to make sure I caught everything. I mean, it was really, really good. I like the way that you bring the audience in by referring to certain audience members, but you do it in a way that doesn't make them think that they're part of the act.
Mhm.
And you're allowed to keep going with your act. So that was masterful in my mind, because a lot of folks, me included, if I bring an audience member in, they think they're part of the act and they think they're going to talk to me for a half hour. And you did a really good job of that. But I gotta say, you really pulled me in. I love the dad stuff. I just love the fact that you're in your mid 30s now, and you're starting to feel the change between being a young man and an old man, and you're right in between, and it just really centered around that, and I just loved it.
Man, Scott, you over here gonna make me blush. I appreciate that, man. That means a lot. I thoroughly enjoyed the whole process. And it was a great night in general. The crowd was great. And there is a balance, as a comic knows very well, of if you decide to go into the crowd. I'll speak for myself because I'm not
Uh-huh.
a crowd work guy. That's not my
Yeah.
lane. If I go into the
Yeah.
crowd, I'm very intentional. I don't want this to turn into a town hall. That's not my goal.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so I want to get in and get out. But I appreciate that, man. I'm really excited for it to come out.
Yeah, I have to think that the 46-year-old guy must have really appreciated the multiple callbacks to him.
Yeah, yeah, he definitely didn't feel that way.
Yeah. So let's talk about the journey up until doing that
Sure.
album. How long have you been doing stand up?
It'll be 12 years this October.
12 years. And are you Atlanta based?
I am. Yeah, I live here in Atlanta. Atlanta's
Okay.
home now. I'm originally from Louisiana, but Atlanta's home.
Okay. So I'm in Huntsville, so I'm not too
Oh
far away
yeah.
from you.
Love
And
Huntsville.
you know what I don't understand is the fact that you're on Eastern time and I'm on Central time, and you're further south than I am.
No idea.
I was looking at the invite because we do a calendar invite for this. I'm like, is it really Eastern time in Atlanta? I didn't even know, and I had to
Yeah.
look it up to see what time it was for you.
Yeah. Every time I do a show out there called Epic, I
Okay.
always I always forget on the way back. It always hurts on the way back of
Uh-huh.
losing that hour.
Yeah, yeah. I'm new to Huntsville, and I'm just getting to know
Okay.
some of the comedians, and I think is it Scott Eason that
Scott
puts
Eason,
on?
my
Yeah,
man.
yeah. I haven't really talked to him a whole bunch because I
Mm,
haven't been doing as much comedy as I want to, but I've talked to him a couple times. I got to see him open for I can't remember who it was. For a guy at Stand Up Live, and that was it's nice, and it's nice that they've got a good local scene here, and you can do an open mic just about I think 4 nights a week here,
mm.
so 4 or 5, so that's good.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great scene that's rising up. Alabama in general. I know there's some great comics who are working hard in Mobile and Birmingham.
Uh-huh.
So it's definitely on the rise in the next few years.
Yeah. So let's talk about this 12 years that you've
Mhm.
been doing stand-up comedy. What brought you to doing stand-up?
Randomness, if I'm honest with you.
Uh-huh.
I did not grow up like a lot of times you hear people talk about their origin story of becoming a
Yeah.
stand-up. They'll talk about, my mom used to have on the Carlin records, or my dad used to listen to Pryor. That was not my lane, Scott. I
Uh-huh.
came from a very sheltered home, and so we weren't gonna have any of that kings of comedy cussing up in my house.
Yeah.
And so stand up really was not in my world at all. I wasn't thinking of it. Fast forward very quickly to I'm married. I graduate college. I moved to Atlanta. I'm 21 at the time. And what's crazy in 2010, which is when it starts,
Uh-huh.
was one of the craziest years of my life. In 2010, I became a father. I started my teaching career, which was really going to be the foundation of stability as I
Mhm.
pursued comedy. And then I started stand up. And probably in the summer of 2010, a friend, I can't even say a friend because I don't know who they are, but I just know this how it happened. I'm cutting up, we're having fun, hanging out, some people, and we're just joking. And this guy says, "Man, you're really funny. Have you ever thought about doing stand-up?"
Mhm.
Scott, to this day, I had never thought about doing stand-up. I didn't think it was a career. I didn't think it was an option. My goal, I had graduated with a degree in journalism. I thought I was
Uh-huh.
going to be on Sports Center with Dan Patrick and Stuart
Yeah.
Scott. Um, and I had another great friend, one of my best friends to this day, David Perdue. He said the same thing to him. We both were like, no, I haven't. I mean, I love stand up, like comedians in general. And we
Mhm.
signed up for an open mic, Scott, in October 27th of 2010. And honestly, to the day, it hasn't changed my life. It's changed my life ever since. But
Uh-huh.
what's crazy is like, I kind of like when you reflect back on, if you ever done this, where you're like, man, if that would have went differently, would I still be here? And honestly, I don't know. I'd probably be a principal somewhere with 25 keys right now.
Yeah.
Had he not asked me that question.
Yeah. That's funny. My story's different, but similar in the fact that um, where I worked, and I didn't start until I was 52, and but a guy at work was planning our office Christmas party,
Mm,
and they had like a magician for 3 years in a row. And me, who had been working there for I think at the time 12 years, I had never gone to it
mm.
because I just wasn't I'm not a go to office party type
Sure,
guy.
sure.
But the guy who was planning it at the time said, "We want you to do stand-up comedy for the Christmas party."
Mm.
And I immediately just said no, 'cause I love stand-up comedy,
Sure.
and my parents did. The funny thing is my parents had 8 tracks, comedy 8 tracks,
Yeah.
and they had a lot of Flip Wilson. It was
Oh,
just like
Flip.
it was I think it was 4 or 5 Flip Wilson ones, and he's got this belly button joke that I would always like rewind and listen to it over and over again. And so he was like one of my first, and then
Mhm.
Tom Dreesen, Steve Martin, all those guys
Yep.
came up, and Letterman and all that. So I really love stand up, but I never thought about doing it myself. And I kind of got bit like you did right after I did that. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this now. And I've come in and out of it. I still feel like a hobbyist, but I really enjoy doing it. And there's no better feeling than just you. The one thing you don't think about when you're on stage is making money. You think
Mhm.
about the money before and after,
Right.
but you don't think about it when you're on stage. You just want to get the laughs and have people feel good.
That's it. That's really it. If you came in to stand up, hoping to sell out stadiums and make money, you already lost. You already
Yeah.
got the wrong approach and mindset. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Those laughs, I mean, you could earn nothing as you do most of the
Yeah,
time
yeah.
on your way up. But if you have a great set and things go well and you connect with maybe an audience member after the show, that drive home is all worth it.
Mhm. Now, your comedy is super relatable from what I heard on the album. Is that pretty much how it started for you? Was it personal stories, or did you have to go through what a lot of comedians do and do the puns and dick jokes and all that kind of stuff before you got to it?
No, I wasn't really that really wasn't my lane from the jump. That kind of just was. I mean, because one of the big things for myself, like when I came into it, like again, I had very little exposure to it. I
Uh-huh.
didn't really have Comedy Central at home growing up, no cable really. So I started really getting sprinkles of stand up in college here and there in the dorm, whatever. But again, that's still not a lot. I'm not
Uh-huh.
sitting down watching hour specials in 2006.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just tried to be, that journey of trying to be who you are off stage, on stage, right? That
Mhm.
that that balancing act. And so I talked about what I knew. I talked about myself, my family, my upbringing. And so I think that's something that I do take pride in is this relatability, which, we can get into it later if we want to. When I went overseas, that was one of the huge elements of my act that I was like, oh, this is a strength for me. And just over time, I've just continued to rely on that and sharpen that skill.
Mhm. Do you feel like not being a super fan and not having been exposed to so much actually gave you a leg up into finding we talk about your comedy voice. Do you think that that gave you a leg up in finding it because you didn't know any better?
I'll definitely say it came from a different perspective. I don't know about
Yeah.
leg up, but I definitely kind of came with this clean palette
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
I really wasn't coming in trying to. I mean, don't get me wrong, I had some of my favorites, but like I came in, but like, all right, well, if I'm gonna do it, I'm just gonna go up there and figure it out on my own. Where it
Uh-huh.
wasn't so much so of like, well, I've seen every late night set from '97 to 2008,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. I've watched every HBO half hour, and this is the way it should be. It was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna throw stuff at the wall, and hopefully
Uh-huh.
they laugh. Many times they did it for the first year, and we're gonna keep going. So that's kind of how I started off.
Uh-huh. How did it feel knowing that you're a parent and you need to provide for your kid at the same time that you're thinking about doing this thing that may or may not actually work out for you?
Yeah, yeah. So the absolute biggest cornerstone of my journey has really just been my wife's support. My wife and
Uh-huh.
we both are dream chasers, both push each other. So her support to see the passion that I quickly fell in love with, alongside again that teaching career that bubbled in 2010 as well, was this
Mhm.
great just mixture where I was like, all right, got daytimes. I don't really have any weekends, not really any evenings as a teacher per se.
Mhm.
So I'll be able to get off work, get home 4:30, hang out, and then kind of go into the night. And so that was really a huge relief. And finding that balance, that was a huge piece,
Mhm.
because the being committed in this, if you're really trying to grow in your craft and be great at this, then the time commitment, you don't really know it on the front end. Like you're like, yeah, I'll sign up for an open mic. I'll make some people laugh,
Yeah.
right? But if you're trying to be great at this, and when you really when it really clicks, we're like, oh no, this is what I want to do.
Right.
Then the level of commitment involved is a lot.
Yes.
And for some people, they're like, no thanks. But for those who say, yeah, I still want it, you've got to figure that out. Whether you're an individual, whether you're in a relationship, and so that support and that understanding and communication was huge for us.
Uh-huh. How long into it did you get your first paying gig?
Ooh, my first paying gig came about 8 months in, and to this day, it is still the worst night of stand up of my life. It is my when I say, hey, what's your bomb story? That's my bomb story.
Is it? Well, tell me more. How did that go?
Sure, sure, sure. So two things. One, is this a family show? Are there children watching this show?
You can
Okay, we're free. Okay.
yeah, the language is free, yeah.
Okay. So long story short, like David, again, the guy I started with, we do a podcast together. My road dog, his uncle, David's the same age as me.
Uh-huh.
His uncle's like, hey, I want you to come do stand up with your friend at my high school reunion. Now, Scott,
Mhm.
I didn't know any better. I was a poor comic. That's strike number one because this
Yeah.
uncle's at least 70.
Yeah.
Okay. That's already problematic. Okay. There is zero relatability here. Okay.
Uh-huh.
We get to the parking lot. Uh, just old Deuce and a quarters, Cadillac DeVille's, Cutlass Supremes. There's a public transportation van with the wheelchair accessibility on the side. I'm like, this is not gonna go well. But we're poor comics. We're like, all right, let's get paid. We go into the show, and I don't know if you've ever been a part of ambush comedy, but nobody's anticipating comedy. Nobody
Oh,
wants comedy.
okay.
Nobody's ready for comedy. The lights are up, the music blaring. You've got uncles and aunties, which I call them, which are older black men and women. They're ready to have a good time. Earth, Wind, and
Uh-huh.
Fire is playing. They've got oxtails. I want to paint the picture for you, Scott.
Yeah.
They are ready to have a good night.
Yeah.
You understand? They're not expecting 24-year-old unseasoned comedians to come talk for 12 minutes about nonsense. That's
Yeah.
not on their bingo card. So the DJ gives me the mic, no host, no setup, no lights dropping. They're
Uh-huh.
like, hey, we got comedy happening. Sit down. So they're upset. Um, I go up, it's about 200 people in this room, and I just respectfully, they just let me eat it for just 12 minutes.
Mhm.
They don't boo, they don't yell, they just sit in the anger, and I could feel and see the
Oh,
animosity.
yeah.
I turned behind me, there's like four older uncles in the back. Every time I turn and look, they would just go, not today, young fella. And I would just turn back around. I just turn back around because I didn't want no smoke. And so I get off stage. I give the mic to David. David's bombing. I go rush over to get some meatballs because I need to emotionally eat.
Uh-huh.
And so this is the craziest part is that so I'm there minding my business, and two older gentlemen walk up to me. One of the gentlemen, he says, "Hey, my friend, real high school feeling. Hey, my
Mhm.
friend said you should quit comedy." Now, I still gotta be a respectful gentleman in this scenario here, right? And
Uh-huh.
so I'm like, thank you, sir. I
Uh-huh.
appreciate that." And then I go on and I tell myself, I was like, all right, just stay calm, stay patient. David's gonna get off stage. We're gonna get out of here, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I go on, and then two women come into the room, okay? Two, and then the two men. So the two men who
Uh-huh.
talked to me, the two women, now it's four of them, they're hanging out in the corner. Okay. And so the man leans up and he rolls over and he just leans into this girl who I would assume, Scott, if I'm honest, they haven't seen each other in 20, 30, 40 years. Who knows
Uh-huh.
how long, right? And and they go on to have this conversation. And the last thing I remember, true, 100% true story, the last thing I remember hearing is that this man leans over and he goes, "Hey, Darlene, just real quick, let me know. Do you still squirt?" And
Oh.
I was done. I was done. I left. I got David. I got my meatballs. We got in the car. I was like, I gotta go. That was probably the
Oh.
first time, Scott, and probably the last time, thankfully, where I was like,
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I don't know if this is for me, actually. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. Maybe I should just get my master's in education and be a good guy. I don't
Yeah.
know.
You know what's funny though? Your suckage brought people together. They hadn't seen each other in so long. You
So
broke
long.
the ice because they united in not liking you,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing. You did a service.
Well, in hindsight, I'm glad I could be a hero with no cape.
Yeah, and I can say that because I have united people in hating me too. So it goes both ways.
For
But in
sure.
my case, it's always young people. These kids in their 20s with their arms crossed saying, "Who is this guy
Who
and
is
why is
this
he up
guy?
here?" Now, one of the things that I really got from your album is that you're very quick-witted, and I don't know how much structure you go into when you get on stage. I
Mhm,
don't know, and this is a good thing because I really study the stuff that I listen to and I watch,
mhm,
and I can't tell if you had like bullet points of stuff you wanted to go over and you were going to riff the way you wanted to riff, or
mhm.
if you had everything like written down word by word, and you just colored it with anything that the room brought to you. So what is it? Which way is it? Do you like to have a real structured set, or are you just ready to go out there with some ideas, and you're going to put them out there and see what comes back?
Yeah, I'm definitely the latter. I'm definitely a latter. I appreciate
Okay.
that. I try to make sure that being the latter, where I'm very structured and it's all written out, I want it to feel natural. I want it to feel
Uh-huh.
organic. I want it to feel present in the room. But like my process, and I love talking process. Like I am a Google Doc guy. So I've got
Okay.
all of my jokes and stories in the Google Doc. It's color coordinated for different reasons.
Mhm.
And I'll write it all out, right? Just like verbatim how I think I want to say it, right?
Uh-huh.
And then, I'll kind of say it in my head, a time or two, go on stage, and then as a comic, you just pound it, pound it, pound it.
Mhm.
But I know where I'm going. I've got the roadmap, right? And
Mhm.
so then if something happens in the room, or if I can make a call back later, then that's where, the real piece of the craft of this organicness kind of kicks into another gear.
Mhm.
But I definitely am not. Me and my best friend David, we talk about being completely opposite. He'll go up there with like 3 bullet points for 15 minutes, and I
Uh-huh.
would never, I would never do that. I go up with, I've got like, all right, I got 6 paragraphs in my head. It's gonna sound fresh. It's gonna sound like a conversation, but
Yeah.
I know exactly where I want to go.
Yeah, you were really good at it, because I was totally baffled. I didn't know which way it was, because I've heard some really good comics that can do that, but
Sure.
you really had me in a spot where, did he just come out here with some ideas and decide he's going to do an album,
I wish I
or
would.
yeah. And so it was very natural and organic, like you said. It felt really good. Now, thinking about, I mean, this album's right about, it's pretty close to an hour.
Mm.
How much of your life has been spent putting that material together, of your comedy life, I should
Mhm.
say?
Yeah, yeah. That was really one of the big questions I wanted to figure out. I've been working on, this for close to 12 years. And it was really this thing of me figuring out how much older stuff that I want to do and how much of the newer stuff that I want to
Mhm.
mix in. And I'll be honest with you, I went back and forth. And so just a little context here of how I came about it. So I was able to go full time. So I've been teaching since the beginning. I was able to
Mhm.
go full time with comedy in 2018.
Mhm.
Did that for 2 years. The pandemic starts, right? I go back into the classroom.
Mhm.
And excuse me, I knew that this was going to be kind of a one and, if things were going the way that they're going now, I was going to be kind of just in and out, 1 year teaching and back out. And
Mhm.
so this was a really important decision. Family man, husband, father of three, right? I've got to make an important, wise decision here. And so I knew that, all right, financially, I need to think about 2022 online spins, online plays, right? Pandora, Sirius XM, things of this nature.
Mhm.
Now, comparatively, which I don't know how much or how little it caught your guard or you paid attention to, but like comparatively, I'm a cleaner comic,
Yeah.
which is just authentically who I am as a person in
Mhm.
general, right? Being authentically myself on stage and off stage. So, knowing what I know about the business side, I was like, okay, let me take all the old work I'm proud of, right? That lean
Mhm.
towards that clean side. So, a couple new things here that I love right now, mix it up together. It's about 80/20, older material, newer material,
Mhm.
and put it out so that when I told my principal I'm not returning, I'm optimistic that the plays and the spins will have more opportunity, more stations,
Uh-huh.
right, to kind of potentially earn some income for me to take care of my family doing what I love to do. So one, it was kind of an 80/20. But then on the other side, I'm going to be kind of planning out right now my first independent tour to kind of
Uh-huh.
tour this new hour. So I'm really excited for them to hopefully have heard or will buy and listen to the album and then also enjoy a live show and kind of really get 2 hours out of me.
Right, right. Yeah, I really respect the fact that you I mean, it had to have been so hard for you to be deciding to do the full-time thing, and then the pandemic hits, and you've gotta reel it back in
Mm,
and go back into the classroom, and it didn't stop you. I'm really glad it didn't, because it stopped a lot of people.
sure, sure. Yeah, it was. I mean, forever grateful for teaching kind of came out of nowhere, just like comedy. And it just has been such a thread of stability for myself and my family here. But I just knew, and even, again, go back to that support. My wife was just
Mhm.
like, like, it's probably going to just be a year for you. And I was like, yeah, we'll see, whatever it takes. And I was like, yeah, it's just going to be a year for me.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking forward to getting back there full time in June.
Right, right. Now, one of the things you mentioned is the Sirius XM thing, which is really the only, I guess it's the only way that a comedian is gonna get paid other than doing shows, because if you consider streaming, it just
Right.
doesn't give you anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that Sirius, you know, for some reason they decided to put a business plan together that actually pays the people that they put on their channels.
Right.
And having an album like this, one of the things I'm noticing on the comedy channels on Sirius XM is they're doing longer form stuff where they sometimes will do a full album.
Hmm.
Sometimes they'll do, like 3 cuts in a row and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Are you hoping to get in on some of that?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
definitely am. I'm all about like with Sirius, you're right. I want to appreciate them trying to put money in pockets of creatives and so on and so forth. Some people should take note of that.
Yeah, I know.
And
Spotify.
and two, yeah, I mean, it would be. I know several comics who have been able to live off of, especially in the midst of everything that's been going on, off of their online, income.
Mhm,
And that has just been really encouraging and motivating for myself with the album and just in general when you're trying to build a body of work, when you're trying to, you know, the comedy club headlining a comedy club is really kind of the long con where it's like
mhm,
everybody wants their name in the marquee and you want the Thursday through Saturday headlining thing, but
mhm.
en route to that you've got to find ways to continue to make money,
Yeah.
make income on the way there. And
Mhm,
so over the last, I don't know, at least a decade, I guess I feel like Sirius has been around for us. Online spins and online plays have continued to give specifically comics that opportunity to hit the road more, where
mhm,
you might play a really fun club in the Midwest that's not paying you a ton,
mhm.
but you also have 2 albums out that's taking care of everything in between. And so it kind of tries to find some middle ground.
Right, right. Are you planning on doing vinyl for your album?
Someone asked me that a few weeks ago, and I have not thought about it because that's not
Yeah,
really a world and just kind of any real like connection I have.
yeah.
But you're the second person. Now I got to think about it.
Yeah, and I'm starting to see comedians do it. I
Yep,
remember who
true.
I saw at Stand Up Live. It was Chris Porter, and he, held up this vinyl of his last album, and I think I probably saw like 15 of them walk out the door. And
Mm,
I I should be the guy who loves vinyl, and all my vinyl is gone.
yeah,
I don't understand why it's even making a comeback, but good for it.
good for it.
and, if that's what's going to happen, I'm so deaf that I can't hear the difference between vinyl and streaming or anything like that. I do use Tidal because it sounds better than Spotify, and I don't want to give
Okay.
Spotify any more of my money.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's I do get that, but the whole vinyl thing is totally just, it just goes right over my head. I do remember um having albums and looking at them, and I thought it was really cool. It just doesn't it's not something I need anymore. But on the other hand, I know a guy who presses vinyl and makes
Mm,
really cool, like liquid filled and
yeah.
LED and stuff like that. And that stuff just flies off the shelves. He sells out
Mhm.
like 10 minutes after he puts something on
Wow.
sale. And
Wow.
yeah, and all over the world too. So it's definitely something that I don't understand, but a lot of other people do.
Yeah. I've heard it. Yeah. Again, I would relate to cassettes and 8 tracks more than vinyl personally here.
Yeah.
Just the way that I was, brought up. But I'll probably, if I do think more about it, at best case scenario, I'll probably reach out to like, people and followers and be like, hey, who's interested? And if there's
Yeah.
enough interest, I may think about it. But otherwise, probably not.
Yeah, yeah, it's just it's a weird thing, and
Yeah,
I'm glad that there's another way that you can make money,
sure.
and, the only thing is I don't know what the outlay is to get everything started and get stuff pressed and all that,
Yeah, no idea.
and yeah, and what how much you actually make per and all that kinda stuff, but yeah, it's definitely interesting. So you talked about leaning into the, cleaner style of comedy from the get-go.
Mm,
And I've done the same thing, even though I swear a lot as a person.
mm,
I don't ever talk about sexual stuff or anything like that, but I just, and my son caught it from me. We both, we both use language uh, very often,
uh-huh.
and my when I type F into my phone, it automatically goes to that word
Yeah.
instead of other words that start with F. So, but doing the clean stuff, because that comes natural to you, do you feel like that gave you a little bit of an advantage over other people your age when you started out that were, like I said, doing the dick jokes?
Mm, mm. So a couple things. One, um, again, it wasn't even like a decision for me in the sense of like do or don't do. I was just like be you, right?
Mhm.
And so that was an important piece for me to really because I was trying to figure out who I was. I was trying that voice as a stand-up, whoo, that is a
Yeah.
booger, where you feel like you're not being a sponge or just a replica of your favorite three comedians combined, right?
Mhm.
And so there was that element. But I do think, and I also say this point here, just so nobody tries to slide into my DMs. I don't think cleaner comics or necessarily better comics or funnier comics. I think it's different. I think it's a different skill that every comedian, in my opinion, especially starting up, right? Especially if
Mhm.
you're trying to make money, find opportunities. I personally feel like every comic should have a good bit of time that can be clean so that they can work on opportunities. So
Mhm.
I was able to do more opportunities in my first several years coming up because I could be clean, right?
Mhm.
So the corporate gigs, I could get that. The college gigs, I could get that if they wanted clean. I could get several other opportunities because I was able to, which is one big reason why I was able to go full time, was because I was able to do that time. So I was
Mhm.
able to make more money. I was able to do more sets and continue to work my craft more. So,
Mhm.
when you look at it that way, it's like, man, there were a lot of positive and advantages, if you will, to doing that.
Mhm.
So it's something that definitely isn't mandatory if you're thinking about considering starting stand up, but there are different ramifications that come with being able to, be a great MC at a festival and make $500, or
Yeah.
go work a corporate gig and get paid a crazy amount of money for 15 minutes at some
Yeah.
banquet or whatever.
Right. Right. Do you feel like it was helpful to you to have a friend that was going through the whole comedy thing at the same time you were?
Scott, it was huge. The community of stand up, man. I'm so grateful for it. It's tough. Nobody knows what you're going through. Nobody
Yeah.
knows why you're out 3 to 5 nights a week, making no money, driving an hour and a half to do 6 minutes. Nobody understands
Yeah.
that. What is that? That doesn't sound smart.
Yeah.
so so when you've got, a road dog or two or three or whatever, who you can go to the same shows with, you can build off each other, you can give each other, feedback and tags and, ideas for premises, and, you
Mhm.
can take road trips with that camaraderie, man. I really do. I really love the stand up community because I'll go to another city and I hop on the Facebook group. Hey, man, I'm coming in town. This, and this. These are the dates. Love to hop on your show. And then boom, 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 boom. Yeah, man, hop on the show because
Mhm.
they know what it's like to go into a new scene, a new city, and do the same thing.
Mhm.
Especially like if I'm out randomly, party, mixer, wedding reception, whatever, and somebody's like, they say they're a comic, or I get a sense they're a comic. It's just like this magnetic feel.
Yeah.
And so, like, you do stand up too? Yeah, I bombed. I bombed too. And
Yeah.
so there's this connection for sure.
uh Now I feel from the album that there's a bringing of people together, and I want to ask: have you ever brought a racist white person around to the point where they at least toned down their racism and they told you
Mm,
about it?
mm. That's a great question. I can't specifically say yes to that. I can say that I have a bit. Well, I had an old ending for that skydiving bit on the
Uh-huh.
album,
Uh-huh.
where it talks about the police actually. And
Yeah.
I was doing a cruise ship, and either he was a cop or he was a retired cop. He came around at the end. He's like, "Yo, man, thought you were great. Didn't love the way that skydiving bit ended." And
Uh-huh.
we have a conversation respectfully, and I kind of shared why I said what I said, and he shook my hand at the end. He was like, "Well, uh, I forget how I'm paraphrasing. He was like, I wouldn't have said it, but I love it." And so,
Uh-huh.
so there was that moment there. But I think comedy, laughter, in my opinion, is very similar in the sense with music, where you could go anywhere in the world and see somebody bob their head or tap their toe and know
Mhm.
that they're vibing to a good beat. The same
Mhm.
thing, I could go anywhere in the world and see somebody laughing. I don't have to know what happened. I don't know
Yeah.
the language, but I can like, oh, they're laughing. They are enjoying something right
Yeah.
now, and there's
Mhm.
that connection for any human.
Yeah. That's great. I I compare you a little bit, and you may have worked with him before, to Dwight Simmons from
Uh
Indianapolis,
huh.
and he's really good at bringing the whole crowd with him,
Uh
and he would do. I come from Indiana, and he would do Elkhart, Indiana, all the time, and the entire audience would be white,
huh.
and he could really bring them along
Hmm.
and still talk about sometimes racial stuff,
Sure.
and yet I feel like maybe he made an impact, and
Hmm.
and I felt like from your album that maybe you did the same thing.
I appreciate that. I just did his podcast last week. He's a
Oh,
great
did
guy.
you? Okay.
Love the white. There is an element of that thread, right? And
Uh-huh.
so and stop me if you don't want to go there. We'll get there later, whatever. But
Uh,
one of the biggest elements or factors in my comedy career was when we lived in China.
uh-huh.
And all that to say, when I was there, when I got over there, I was about 2.5 years into comedy. So still not a good comic.
Mhm.
And I quickly found out the American, the English cultural pop references, they weren't flying. Not
Mhm.
just because it was only like Chinese natives over there, but literally it was at that time anyway, the most diverse, largest city proper in the world. So you
Mhm.
had 12 Australians, 6 people from Finland, 15 Chinese natives, 4 American expats. And you just had this room of 80 people from all over. And
Uh-huh.
so, though that year and a half, man, it was really great to really help me hone in my craft of writing and finding this thread of universality.
Mhm.
And so, when I think about trying to bring a crowd along, that was a big impact on me of like, oh,
Mhm.
like we all come from different first languages, different cultures, so on and so forth. But what's the thread that's keeping us all in this room together? Like
Yeah.
as humans, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And there's still so many things. There's a lot of differences, but there's a ton of similarities.
Yeah.
And so for myself, that's always something I've tried to push myself with in the craft of trying to say, all right, I know we all just randomly came into this dark room together, but let's go on this journey together as a team.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And your comedy brings, the family into it, and personal experiences that are more universal, which it brings everybody together. There aren't a whole lot of, like, pop culture references and
Mhm.
things like that. So I can see that just being able to work wherever you're at.
Right, right.
Well,
Yeah.
tell me
Go ahead.
about cruise ship comedy. I
Yeah.
wanna I wanna hear your perspective on cruise ship comedy, because you're probably my 105th interview,
Uh-huh.
and probably 10-15% of those folks that I've talked to have worked cruise ships either a lot or off and on.
Sure, sure. So cruises, running my own shows in colleges, right, was the base of me being able to go full time. I
Uh-huh.
worked 2 years, or before the pandemic, I was doing it full time for 2 years. And I worked primarily with Carnival Cruise Line.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna be honest with you, Scott, loved it.
Mhm.
Had absolute blast. If somebody's even considering it and they get roughly the same experience that I got, I think they would really enjoy it. So on one end, as just pound for pound as a comedian, it was great because I had to work material, right? So on a
Mhm.
typical on a trip, you're doing two, three, about 5 shows,
Mhm.
right? Got to have at least 90 minutes of material. You're not getting 90 minutes of material in a weekend or a month, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, in a city. You know, so you're not getting long sets like that. So you
Yeah.
have to do a half hour clean and then
Uh-huh.
2 different half hours for adults.
Uh-huh.
So the churning out and working and revising and editing the material, I was really putting in that effort to build the album, to build a new hour, and to
Mhm.
build probably another 20-ish minutes that I've got that needs more time and effort as well.
Mhm.
Right. So just as a comedian, it was great. And then also, it was, and let me be very clear, this was like short trips. This was like four
Uh,
days to 7 days. This wasn't
yeah.
months on
Right.
end type of thing. So that's important to know. And then I could get off the ship with the guest. I could, I had my room to myself. Like there were
Mhm.
perks and amenities that I had because I wasn't quote unquote crew, right? I was kind of in
Mhm.
this middle. I wasn't also quote unquote a guest.
Yeah.
So you do your act, you eat, you hit the beach, you walk around, get some magnets, and you get home. So it was really a great experience for me. For me, it was also
Uh-huh.
great because again, they would fly me into different ports, right? So the people who's porting in Baltimore are going to be different than the people potentially porting in Fort Lauderdale, than the New
Mhm.
Orleans port. Then they would fly me into Puerto Rico. Like, so again, this universality, I'm working my craft of trying to find the threads that are bringing everybody together. One
Mhm.
of my favorite comics, and I'll stop rambling. My favorite comedian is Chris Rock. That's my go. Who's your
Mhm.
who's your favorite, Scott?
Really, it all goes back to Dave Letterman for
Sure,
me.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. So he said something when he was coming up, Chris Rock. He said, I wanted my act to be so tight, so great that I
Uh-huh.
could kill and destroy at the Apollo, but then I could take that same act and kill at Carnegie Hall.
Uh-huh.
And so I took that to heart. I think about that all the time. He's like, yo, I just want to be the best comedian for everybody.
Mhm.
And so that's what's motivated me, man, since the beginning.
I can this is the first time that it's really put a light bulb up for me as far as the cruise ships go and having to have that material ready because as a comic, the only thing that you can do is push yourself to write more and perform more and get better. And if you don't have anything that's pushing you to do that,
Mhm.
then you can get lazy
Real quick.
because I've caught myself get lazy. But
Oh
when
yeah.
you're doing cruise ship stuff, you can't be lazy. It's
Yeah, no.
there, and you have to be able to put that material out there.
Yeah, the first 6 to 8 months, I quickly realized they were like, "Hey, you can repeat." Like, so let's say they were like, "Do 2 family shows and then 3 adult shows."
Mhm,
Well, they would allow you to repeat a family show, and they would allow you to repeat one of the adult shows. But I
mhm,
quickly found out that if the crowds knew you were repeating, the room was not going to be full, right? They're like,
mhm,
"Oh, I've already seen this," right? And so there was this push and motivation, right, to be like, no, I've got a new set, come see me,
uh-huh.
type of thing, where you're in this auditorium that holds 400 and you got like 95 people scattered.
Uh-huh.
That'll humble you really quick.
Yeah. And one of the things the marketers talk about, Tim Ferriss, I think, is one about getting 1,000 true fans. If you can do that, then
Oh yeah.
you can build on that. And I would have to think that doing that cruise ship comedy, there's people who are going to remember you and they're going to follow you. They're going to jump on your Instagram page or your Facebook page or whatever and make sure that they know who you are and they follow you. Did you get some of that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was huge too. Just in general, the following, the support, I
Mm,
didn't have any merch. I saw a lot of great comics sell merch on there as well. So you're making some
mm,
extra income on top of that. I mean, yeah, I still have people hit me up, whether they're going on a ship or whether I'm posting something like, oh, I saw you on this trip and we had a great time. Please let me know when you're in town, yada, yada, yada.
uh,
So even that, building that base of 1,000 true fans, which is one of my favorite just kind of mindsets and perspectives to have,
mhm.
that I think about often.
That's what I'm going for. I'm right about at 7 right now.
Okay.
So, yeah, yeah,
Okay. Small steps, Scott.
993
Small
more and
steps.
I'm there. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of the album.
Yeah.
This is coming out. Is it the 25th? It's coming out
March 25th. March
March
25th.
25th.
I know who I am.
Yeah, and how much work went into that, and when did it start, and when did you get the finished product?
Sure, sure. At the beginning of 2021,
Mm.
2020, it was just real chill. I was like, all right, let's just be safe and be alive.
Uh-huh.
Um, and 2021, mindset wise, I was like, all right, when things seem like there's some light, I think this is the year I want to put out an album. It was really, really some year and just reminding me that man, nothing is promised. Let's go hard for what we want.
Mhm.
And what's interesting about like my career leading up to the album is that I've pretty much created everything on my own independent. Like nobody's been knocking at my door.
Uh-huh.
The cruise agent, the college agent, the shows I've produced, all this opportunity has come because, to be honest with you, I'm gonna toot my own horn. I'm a cold email connoisseur. I take pride in reaching out. Like literally,
Uh-huh.
click with Scott. We don't know each
Yeah.
other, and here we are.
Right,
And
yeah.
and so and so that was who I was and still who I am. But
Mhm.
one thing that about me was that I don't know why, and I can't really articulate it, but I was like, I think I want my album to be like with a label. Like I just, for
Mhm.
myself personally, I didn't want to go the independent route.
Mhm.
So I reached out to everyone, and I really enjoyed it. The team at Helium, so to be coming out with Helium Records.
Mhm.
And so this probably was around like May,
Okay.
give or take. And so we were trying to find dates, make sense. We ended up in October, which was right around the kind of the comedy anniversary. I was like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
that feels good. Let's do it.
Mhm.
And then the rest was off to kind of start working longer sets, putting it together. Like I said, taking that 80% from old, just finding the 20% from new, really
Mhm.
kind of working it together, doing shows in town, out town, talking with my, some of my best friends in comedy and in general, and trying to figure it out. And so that whole puzzle, putting it together, took from, the beginning of June through until we recorded it.
Mhm. It One of the things I've noticed, because 'cause I've talked to it's almost 50-50 folks who self-produce and
Mhm,
folks that go with a label.
mhm.
The one thing that is a constant, if you go with a label, you get the finished product sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that was one of the biggest things. They were just like, oh, yeah, we'll do this, and this, and it'll be here for you. I was like, oh,
yeah.
okay.
Meanwhile, if you have to do this, and this, you have to teach yourself to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah, and as far as your what you're gonna do after the album comes out, usually when you do that, that puts a stamp on that particular material, and you can go out, like you said, you can go out and tour on that and put some new material together. Do you feel like there is a time where you have to put material to bed, and this material's done for me now?
I don't believe that to be the case. I do think though, I mean, you probably can relate to there's material you just get tired of doing, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely think it's on this individual level more so than on this like this standard level. I mean, I did a show last night, or the other day recently, this past weekend, and had never been there. And I kind of read the room. I kind of saw what was working for other comics before me.
Hmm.
Kind of was looking at kind of the demographic, and I was like, all right, I don't necessarily I didn't plan to work these bits in, but I think for me to have a good time and for them to have a good time, I'm gonna bring this old bit out.
Uh-huh.
They didn't know it. It was a new bit to them.
Yeah.
And so, our job is to make people laugh, bring joy, forget about your worries for a moment, have a good time, right?
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, if I got to pull out a bit from 2014 that you've never heard, I'm gonna pull it out. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lose any sleep with that.
Right, right. Do you have any stories of bits that you had that you thought was gonna be just fantastic and it fell flat every time,
Yeah.
but then years later, you found a way to make it good?
That is the absolute story of the I actually I put it as my closer on the album. But when I worked for the last several years, the being sexy melted chocolate chunk,
Uh-huh.
met the the whole mac and cheese piece at the end was I literally I wrote that like the first 3 years in comedy, maybe the first 2 years in comedy,
Uh-huh.
and I just wasn't as good of a writer, good of as a performer,
Mhm.
right? And I put it on the shelf. I was like, I don't know, right? I hit China, I hit Texas, I come back. about 5 years later, 2016, give or take, 2015, I pull it back out. Thankfully, better comic, better performer, better comedian.
Uh-huh.
And then from 2015 to, the album, it was my opener, in
Yeah.
the city, out of the city, on the road, tours, headlining. And it was just really like, oh, like nothing's ever like dead, dead. Like you'll put it on the shelf,
Uh-huh.
right? It may be retired, but you'll pull it out of retirement. Shout out to Tom Brady. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like you'll let something come back if it's good enough. But yeah,
Yeah.
that whole 5 minute chunk was has been my bread and butter, man.
Uh-huh. Now, do you have any jokes that were maybe like a one or two liner that hit well, but then you found out you could expand it, that you could actually build on it and build like a 5-minute bit out of it?
The skydiving bit,
Skydiving? Yeah.
which I really I'm excited to do more of those because I was excited just to be like, oh man, this is like a 4 or 5 minute story.
Uh-huh.
And I think it started off with like just a throwaway line about disposable income going skydiving.
Uh-huh.
And then I was like, no, I actually went skydiving. What's the story? And then, probably that next year I was really working it out, because it ends up being a 5 minute bit. But
Mhm.
if you're trying to tell a story, it doesn't start that way. It starts like a messy eight.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of fat, right, around it, right? There's a lot of details that you need to cut and this, that, and the other. So it just, if you're doing if you're doing a 10-minute set and you got this messy 8 minute story,
Uh-huh.
it's like, do I do it? Do I not do it?
Uh-huh.
And so, not only was I proud of getting it there, but it definitely started just kind of as a throwaway line. I was like, no, like just tell the story of going to the middle of nowhere and jumping out of a plane.
Uh-huh. And one of the things that really impressed me with your album is you never had, because you do have some longer bits in there, and you never had a moment because you had enough tags and you kept people leaning in. I never felt a lull.
Mm,
I never felt the fact that, oh, let's wait for him to get around to a punchline or something like that.
mhm.
You were bringing people along, and they stayed engaged during the whole album, really.
Yeah, yeah, appreciate that. I just, I don't really like personally like think much about laughs per minute or anything like
Yeah,
that. But I do that word right there. I want my crowds to be always engaged while I'm on stage.
right.
Right. So even if I'm giving you, you know, 9 seconds of setup and information to kind of really give you a runway,
Mhm,
um, I try to be very intentional with my words, the physicality,
mhm,
inflection, all those things we have on our tool belt as comics, right? To really play around with it,
mhm,
pauses, things of this nature here. And so yeah, I appreciate that. It's definitely something that I'm very I try to be very deliberate about.
mhm. Have you ever fallen into the trap, and I because I have to use social media for the podcast, I watch what happens on social media, and there are a lot of, there's just a lot of haters out there on on
Talk about
on
it.
on particular people. Did you ever get to a point where you felt jealousy because you felt like somebody was getting ahead of you that wasn't as
Mm.
funny or anything like that? And how did you deal with that?
Ooh, that's a good one right there. That's gonna be a whole hour by itself, Scott. Um, you know,
I think you're a mature enough person that you can actually talk about it.
So I definitely think what there were two things really that kept me grounded with this because we talk about it a lot of the time. Is that community? Those my two of my closest friends. We constantly pushed each other and reminded each other, right? So having that community, that was a huge piece. But I think
Mhm,
even bigger than that for myself, and it really ties in, if I'm honest, to my upbringing, was my grandma. She told me that she said, baby, if you ever gonna look left and right, looking at your peers, right, or
mhm,
even strangers, let it never lead to jealousy, envy, and bitterness, but rather to motivation, encouragement, and inspiration.
mhm,
And that's been with me for 30 years.
mhm,
And so that when you get online, when you go to a show, when you hear every year top 6 lists to watch, top comics to blah, this person got into the biggest festival, right? And you're like, oh man, I
uh-huh.
didn't know they were even doing auditions. And so when you hear that, right, if I'm gonna look, if I'm gonna listen to it, if I'm gonna watch it, Let it
Mhm.
lead me to be motivated, more
Mhm.
encouraged, right? And then lastly, if I'm honest, like I just know, I just know, I don't want to say it. I just know everybody's journey is gonna be different. Like
Mhm.
literally, there's only gonna be one Kevin Hart doing stadiums this big, this many movies, right?
Mhm.
That's There are so many killers and monsters on stage who will never be household names,
Mhm.
right? And so there has to be this level of contentment and pride, knowing
Mhm.
that no, when I get on this stage, I'm a dope comedian, right?
Mhm.
I may never get the sitcom, cool. I may never get JFL. I may never get a late night set.
Mhm.
Side note, that's not necessarily necessary anyway anymore in 2022
Right.
to get a career going.
Mhm.
But there's just got to be this level of pride and content. Like, oh no, I'm a good comedian, right? And
Mhm.
anytime I get on stage, they're gonna know about it.
Mhm. And I think you talked about it just a few minutes ago when you nobody is going to do this for you. You have to reach out and do your own thing. And
Yeah.
that's why you emailed me. And one of the things I know about doing this as long as I have, talking to 100 and some comedians, and I watch them, the ones who are consistently positive and don't ever engage in, you know, bad talk about other comedians or stuff like that, when they don't engage in that type of stuff, they always seem to rise above and do better in the long run, even if they're not at the top now.
hmm Listen, I'll take it all, Scott. I'll take it
Yeah.
all. I just think, man, there's so much. It's so easy to look at the negative, and it's so easy to. And I'm not gonna say that everything's all roses and rainbows,
Hmm.
but like literally, I do try to walk around with an appreciation, especially being reminded of everything the last 2 years of what I am. Like
Hmm.
I'm doing what I love. I've got a dope family, amazing wife, like, and I really am grateful for where I am.
Hmm.
Would I love more money and marquees? Sure. I'm not gonna say I won't,
Yeah.
but I'm doing something not only that a lot of people wish they were doing and had the courage to do, but I'm also in an opportunity where I can do, something I'm passionate about. And I can't get so caught up in what I don't have without being grateful for what I do have and what I'm doing.
Uh-huh. You're I can tell you're a peaceful person. It comes through both in the album and here, and it's definitely something that is appreciated in, especially in the comedy world. You must be one of those guys that other comedians come to when they're just at the end of their rope and you bring them down.
I have had a few good conversations at 1 a.m. in the alley, you
Yeah.
know. Turn on the counselor hat and the encouraging friend hat a time or two.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can tell you're a good friend. One of the things I like to ask everybody is there something that you know now that you wish you would have known when you started and you feel like it could have helped you get better quicker?
That's a really good question. Something I know now that had I known it then, it would have helped me get better quicker. Um, the first thing that comes to my mind, which definitely seems silly to say it now, but was just continue to work as many different types of rooms as possible.
Mhm,
You know, if your stick is to, work rooms and clubs and spaces that only you like and you're comfortable in that may look like you, sound like you, cool. That's your
mhm,
prerogative. But for myself, going again from the universality and everything I've talked about, I want to make everybody laugh.
mhm,
So I wish I would have put some more effort and attention into seeking that out earlier. Now
mhm.
it's not only what I do, but it's also like the one of the number one things I tell, comics coming up and so on and so forth. Like, yo, like make sure you're going into spaces that you love and but also America looks a variety of ways,
Yeah.
right? Midwest, you go hit San Fran. San Fran feels different than Sacramento. Here comes
Yeah.
Portland. Now you're in Arizona. Then you go to the Boston. Then you're down here in Montgomery. Like,
Uh-huh.
so being able to work in front of different crowds and really test your material. Like, all right, man, I've got too many bits about the subway,
Yeah.
or whatever. I think it really helps the comic.
Yeah. The reunion wasn't so bad then, right?
No, it wasn't.
So, the album is "I Know Who I Am," and I know why you titled it that, because you know who you are, and I really appreciate that about you. And that comes out the 25th. How can people find you as far as socials and stuff like that?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm having the most fun over on Instagram. You can find me dates, tours, links, all
Yeah.
that jazz. Instagram. That's Damon Jr. Two, DAMON JR, the number two, Damon Jr. Two. I know who I am. March 25th. Scott, this has been so much fun. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm really happy to get to know you, and it's funny, Instagram is my main thing too. I
Yeah,
thought, I thought being my age, Facebook would be the
sure.
thing, and but no, Instagram is really where it's at, and it there's no room for, stupid conversations and stuff to bring you down on Instagram. It's just you put the stuff out there and people appreciate it. And
That's
I,
it.
I think you look at Instagram with a different lens too, because I get tense when I read Facebook, and when I'm with Instagram, just watching cat reels and stuff like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
it's more relaxing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Instagram is where I'm dipping my toe in TikTok. So talk to me in 6 months. But
Okay.
right now, most of my fun's on Instagram.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's great. It's been super great to get to know you. And folks, make sure you get I Know Who I Am. And I think you can go, can you go to your website and pre order?
You go to my website, which is damonsumner.com,
Okay.
or you follow me on Instagram. It's the link in the bio as well.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Well, it's been real great getting to know you. And I absolutely love the album. I laughed a lot when I was pounding the
The
backsplash off.
backsplash. Appreciate it, Scott.
Thanks a lot. All right.